This episode of Around the Layout is brought to you by Spring Creek Model Trains. Family owned for nearly 25 years, Spring Creek is your destination for model trains. Check out springcreekmodeltrains.com for a wide variety of offerings from today's top manufacturers and exclusive products found nowhere else. Whether in Deschler, Nebraska, or at a train show near you, stop in and say wow. To see where they'll be next, visit their website at springcreekmodeltrains.com. From trackside to roadside and wherever you'd see a sign, Scale Signs has it all. With over 1,400 offerings in N, HO, S, and O scale, Scale Signs has the largest collection of fine scale signs on the planet. Come see the details that bring your models to life on their website, scalesigns.com. ATLP Extra is our monthly newsletter delivered right to your inbox each month. Sign up for free at atlpextra.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott, so glad you could join us. Joining me on this episode, coming to us all the way from Switzerland, Robin Felder. Robin, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Ray. How are you doing?
Good morning. It's good morning there. Good evening here. We're bridging that big time gap between Switzerland and the East Coast of the United States to talk about model railroading and all the exciting stuff that you're doing and some really amazing weathering, modeling. You have a switching layout. We're going to try to cover all of that in the hour that we get together. I'm going to just dive right in. And I got to ask the question that I start to think when I look around the globe and I see these type things. How the heck did you start modeling a North American railroad from Switzerland? What got you into that?
Well, I think that's a question I had to think about myself before, because I'm not sure at which point the origins started of that. So railroading as a whole started for me at the age of about 5 or 6, I guess, with some of these small wooden trains called Brio. I'm not sure if they are well known in the US. So it's a small company that makes wooden trains, which is really just for small kids. And then later on, at the age of 9, my dad bought me my first train set from a company from Germany called Märklin. I think you heard that one before, I guess.
Yep, we sure have, yeah.
And it all started with a small little 4-axle steam locomotive and a small little wooden table, which I had in my room, which is about 2.5 meters by 1.25. I think that comes down to 8.2 feet by 4.1.
Yeah, that's about our sheet of plywood. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. It just was a plain sheet of plywood. I had some of the Matchbox vehicles from my early childhood on them, and some trains. I think I had a total of 3 locomotives. And then I had much fun with that. I had a small little pen, which I used to paint down the roads and all that, and buildings from Lego and all that. And then later on, at the age of 12, my family moved to Switzerland, because before that we lived in Hungary, which is east of Switzerland. And at the age of 12, my parents decided to move all the way back. And then I started at school in Switzerland, and trains weren't that interesting anymore. And I think at the age of 19, I really came back to the hobby. That was when I joined military in Switzerland. We have a mandatory military service over here. And between the age of 12 and 19, there were other interests like cars and all that. And at the age of 19, I finally started to do some research online again. And somehow, I'm not even sure how, I think it was a mixture of Google and YouTube. I stumbled across a company called Authorn, which I didn't hear much before. But then I found the website online, and then my interest started in North American trains, because I think at the age of 10, a friend of mine gave me a computer game called Train Simulator 2004.
Okay.
If you are familiar with that one. And there was a BNSF-9 you could drive. And it's all of a sudden it became my favorite paint scheme, and I had much interest in American trains. And also in the Märklin had a catalog similar like the Walters all-year catalog. And in that, they announced the big boy steam locomotive, which of course, compared to European locomotives, it was huge by size. And I saw all the pictures of that locomotive and all the Union Pacific freight cars, and all of a sudden I was a huge fan and much more interested in American trains than in the Europeans one. It was that different landscape, different sizes, different paints, the different railroads, and all the other stuff from Märklin I had right at my home, because all around here it's all about trains, but it's the ones that you have just before your house. And the American things started to look more interesting to me, especially with the landscape and all that. So it's difficult to narrow it down to one point where it all started with the American trains. But if I had to choose a date, I think it's about 2006-ish, where it started with the train simulator computer game, because that was the moment I first saw the BNSF paint scheme and the Dash 9s. I think it started there. And later on, when I found the website of Arthur and also Walters, of course.
Yeah, so you started to see the immense size of American railroading, and that seemed to appeal to you. So when you saw the Athearn and Walters catalog and started to see this, I mean, was this stuff that you were also able to get your hands on, or was it just kind of catalog dreaming?
Well, first it started with a kind of a catalog dreaming, and later on, by coincidence, actually, I found through the interwebs, I found the website of some of the American model railroad shops over here in Switzerland. We had a few, like until 10 years ago, I think there were 3, which were a little bit bigger than the regular railroad shops, because model railroading in Europe, and especially in Switzerland and Germany, is already big, but mostly the European stuff. So American model railroading always was kind of a niche concept, because Switzerland offers a lot in terms of railroading, and most of the people are all correcting Swiss trains and German trains and maybe some Austrian stuff and Italian stuff. So it's the stuff that is all around you. It's easier to research. It's easier to go out, do some rail fanning. And also weathering is not that well known in Europe as it is compared to the US, where most of the people I see online do weathering. Over here, it's more of a niche concept as well, I think. And somehow online, I found some of the shops, and I did a little school project at the age of 15. I think that was the last time I really had a little bit contact to model railroading before my interests changed. I did a very little diorama where I used I think it was a Denver and Rio Grande SD9 of some sort. It really was just for a school project, and that was the first time I went to one of these American railroad shops over here in Switzerland. And after that one closed. So that was a little bit a difficult time, because then it was only catalog dreaming until I found the other shop, also in Zurich, which was about an hour away from where I lived then before. And that shop is still open.
Now, talk about going to that shop, and you said it was mostly Switzerland and German railroading, but not much American. What did they have for American? I mean, what were you, when you were browsing through, what were some of the things that you saw?
Well, the interesting thing is, in every second town, you had a shop for European stuff. And that one shop in particular was specialized for only American stuff. So he didn't even have one single European or Swiss locomotive. He only had American stuff, buildings and trains and all that. And that shop was huge. I couldn't tell you how big it was in size, but for me as a child, it was a huge shop. And he had like half of the Athearn wish list he had in stock. So it was kind of an emotional explosion when I first went there with my dad. That was pretty cool. And that was my first HO scale American engine. Was a Union Pacific ready to roll. I think it was an AC 4400 by Athearn, a ready to roll model in UP color, and 5-car set of intermodal cars.
I want to go back a little bit and ask you, you mentioned that Swiss railroading really wasn't anything that appealed to you to model, but did you go out and rail fan it at all? I mean, it's there, right? I mean, you can't just go outside and see North American stuff. So did you kind of supplement that with watching Swiss railroads?
No, not really. So I think when we moved to Switzerland, when I was at the age of 12, so when we moved to Switzerland, I wasn't able to have the layout anymore because there wasn't enough room. So I wasn't even able to collect or to model or to watch some of my model trains. So the hobby as a whole lost a priority in my life just because of the lack of space, the lack of time, and also school and all that. So it was an interruption in the hobby. And when I came back to the hobby, it really was all about, I was all in for American stuff. That goes back to my childhood because, according to my mom, the first flag I recognized was the Stars and Stripes. The first language I liked was English. The first vehicles I liked when I was a child were all Americans. The first cities I recognized on pictures were also American. So, kind of like a US geek of some sort, and that started pretty early on, and it just, I think it translated down to the hobby as well. So not only as a nation destination where I wanted to be, but also the model interest shifted to American stuff.
I'll ask you a non-railroad question because it's got my curiosity up. You mentioned English, and your English is perfect. I mean, we hear, I can understand. We can communicate just fine. Is English your first language, or is English a second language to you?
English is a second language, and actually, I had only I think it was 2 years of English at school. At high school, I had 2 years of English, but that was just small talk and the general stuff like "Hi, my name is," and "I am from," and all that, and all these phrases. But I really started to develop and to learn a little bit more English via YouTube, Google, Facebook, all the videos, and also when I visited the US, I think in 26, no, I think, it was in 2016, I guess, for the first time. And after that, I rode a lot with American modelers via Facebook. That helped a lot. I also watched some movies in English and watched some like thousands of hours of model related stuff on YouTube, like NS Modeler 24, Dan's Railroad, John Farrington's layout, which I follow closely on YouTube. And all that helped me a lot to develop my skills in English, because at school I really just had the basics.
Well, that's pretty wild that, model railroading and all the videos and stuff help and develop your ability to speak English. I got to ask, tell me about that trip over to the US and what you did in 2016 here in the States.
Yeah, that was so cool. So I did an apprenticeship as a maintenance of way worker for the railroad. So in Switzerland, it's most of the people go to school about at the age of 16 or 17, they chose the path of an apprenticeship as a job. So you learn a job, actually. And for me, that was the railroad. So I did a 3 years apprenticeship as a track worker in maintenance of way for the Federal Railway, because the railway over here is federal. And after that, my sister was a flight attendant back then for a German company. And she told me that if I will finish the apprenticeship successfully, she's going to pay the tickets to New York. And I only have to pay the half of the hotel room and all that. But she's going to give me the flight ticket as a kind of a present for the successful finishing of my apprenticeship. So we went to New York. That was the first time when I flew with my sister. She has been there already for I think 10 times, because as a flight attendant, for her, it was pretty easy to fly back and forth. So yeah. She showed me the most of the things in New York, and it was fantastic. It was such a great trip. We went to Boston for 3 days, and we stayed in New York for 7 or 8 days, I think. It was absolutely fantastic. Like everything, the food, the buildings, the city, the language, the people, it was just absolutely terrific. It was awesome.
Well, how about the trains?
And we didn't do train watching, but as a matter of fact, when we planned our trip over there, she told me we could also go to Boston for a couple days. And I told her we are only going to Boston if we are riding the Acela, because I remembered from Train Simulator, there was a high-speed train connecting New York with Boston. And I think also Washington, if I'm correct, and maybe
That's
Philly.
Correct. Yep.
So I told her I'm going to pay the tickets for the train, but we are not flying both ways. I want to go by train. So the only thing trains-related stuff was, the subway system, of course, and our train trip with the Acela to Boston, which was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you got to ride on a pretty historic line, former New Haven territory, former
Yes.
Pennsylvania territory, and got to see all that, former New York Central territory. So you got to see some pretty historic railroad, and then ride on the infamous Acela and get to see between New York and Boston. And those freight trains were very close. You were very close
Yeah,
to them.
it was a
Yeah.
great experience. However, I
Yeah.
wasn't able to see any freight trains. We didn't do rail finning. I had other priorities back then, and also I
Yeah.
didn't want to bore her because she's not really into trains. So yeah, we decided just to do a city trip, and I hope that I will be able to come to the US again later on to do some rail finning somewhere down the
Yeah,
road.
well, I sure hope you do get that opportunity. And I think a lot of listeners can also relate to that about taking trips, and you either bring a spouse or a significant other or other people, friends that aren't into rail fanning. And then it's always like a pull, like, can I go watch this for a while? And if they're not into it, it is tougher to try to pull away. And I'm sure it was the same situation there, like you mentioned with your sister. So tell me how this, you get back out from the US back to Switzerland. You said you had some mandatory military service that you had to go through, but you were in that time doing research and learning more about American railroading. Tell me some of the other things that you learned that started to really pique your interest.
Sure. So I was about at the age of 19 when I finished the apprenticeship as a track worker. Then I had to go to the military. I was infantry school, and I volunteered to become is it warrant officer, like the rank of sergeant.
Okay.
I was a second in command as a platoon leader, and so that was a total of 430 days of military service. And I had some time there to waste when we had to guard the base and all that. And somehow through the internet, I couldn't tell you how or why, I started to do some researching again, like Walter's website, author new models, and it was about the time when the first GVOs appeared. And I remember the Dash 9 from the train simulator we talked earlier about. So the first GVOs came, pictures of nice UP stuff, NS stuff. I hadn't the knowledge that I do have now, so I didn't really know what is BNSF, what is UP, what is NS, what is East Coast and West Coast differences. So I started slowly to learn about the which tracks go where, which companies have their bases at which state and all that. Yeah, so somehow slowly I came back to the hobby, and then with YouTube was a huge help. I think most of my knowledge in terms of rail specific, like NS related informations, most of the things I think I found on YouTube and Facebook. And I'm not sure, I think NS Modeler 24 was one of the first YouTube channels I subscribed and started to watch his videos, and he is all into NS, as you know. So started to research more about NS, more about GVOs, East and West Coast differences, and slowly started to learn more and more and more. And I think about that time, it became clear for me that I'm going to focus mostly on NS, because before it was all about UP. But that was because of the Märklin catalog, because they had like, I think 1 or 2 Santa Fe steam locomotives and maybe 5 to 8 UP engines. So I only knew about Santa Fe and UP. And after that, I learned about NS. And once I have seen the first GVO in the horsehead paint scheme, man, I was hooked. So that was when I started with my interest in Norfolk Southern.
My interest in Norfolk Southern has also peaked lately, and I don't know if it's an influence of Joe Mame or that it's just it's something different. Have you pinpointed what it is exactly about NS that attracts you to it?
I think if I would have to answer you right now, I think it's the paint scheme. It's just simply cool. It's so awesome. It's so different. And we don't have any black engines over here in Switzerland. There are not a lot of American railroad companies that use all black engines. Of course, there are some. And also, I like the CN paint scheme. I think it's a fairly good looking paint scheme. But man, when I have seen that first GVO with the horsehead logo, it was done. I knew it's gonna be NS, and I think it's just the thoroughbred and the horsehead logo. For me, it's just that. It's so cool.
Yeah, I think that for me, it's kind of that same thing, right? That black, that aggressive look to it, I guess. The being all black, and and of course, I love the fact that even though it's the white NS on the side, the horse head, but I always love seeing them a little bit weathered and seeing just a little bit of dirt on that NS, just that rugged, aggressive, mean, and an amazing history too. And have you started to really dig into the history of NS? Is that something that you've studied?
Yes, I did. I started with it, but not way too much into detail. So most of the things I think I learned via Josh Clark's channel, NS Modeler 24, because he did a lot of videos where he explains exactly which location he is modeling and also the history of it, which I like. And of course, later on, when some companies like, not sure who was the first one, maybe it was Intermountain, and I have seen the first heritage paint schemes. I was like, okay, well, what is Pansy? What is George and Savannah and all that? So I started to do some research about those former companies from the old times. Of course, Pansy, I knew about Pansy, but also the NYC and Penn Central and all that. And it slowly became, I think I have some basic knowledges about NS, but still not the level that I would like to know. And maybe if I go to the US, so I plan a train-specific trip. So a more train-related trip to the US, hopefully next year, maybe the year after, because my second trip to the US was to the West Coast with my former girlfriend. So that was also not much train related. We really just did some cities like LA, San Diego, and Frisco. So I think I gained some basic knowledge about NS, but not the amount of history that I would like to know and learn. So yeah.
Okay, so you're coming to the U.S. Where are we? Because I'm going to say we. Because where are we going, Robin? Where are we going to go see some NS? What are some of the places that you would like to go see where NS operates?
Well, I would love to start with Josh Clark's layout. We talked about that actually. So he and I spoke via Facebook, and he was all in for a visit. I think I would start with him and then go on from there. It's difficult to say where I would like to start because there are so many places that I think Horseshoe Curve.
Oh yeah,
what could go wrong
easy.
with start at Horseshoe Curve,
right?
And then slowly working from there. So
Horseshoe Curve, Altoona. And then, of course, the Juniana shops and being able to check those out. Yeah, you've already got a great place picked out. There's so many other really cool spots that NS operates. But when you get over here, we're going to hook up. We're going to go see some spots. But
yeah, that would be great.
So talk about modeling the NS. You've been inspired. You've got this, this desire to and a love for the paint scheme and learning more about it. Talk about your start of modeling the NS and acquiring Norfolk Southern power.
The problem all started with the fact that I don't really have the space for layout. So when I was a child, I was always dreaming about this huge railroad space, like a hall full of trains. And it slowly became clear that ain't gonna happen over here in Switzerland because the house market is a little bit difficult. Switzerland is a very small country. The houses are small, the apartments are small, so a change was needed in my way of thinking about modeling. So somehow via the internet as well, I slowly learned about shelf layout modeling, which I didn't know anything about before. But then I found all these books by Tom Klimovsky and Milan Smindheim, of course. Yeah, so these two guys. So I started to learn about shelf layouts and modular layout building. And that was the time when I met some guys over here in Switzerland who had the same problem, and they were also American modelers. So one of them is a big CP fan. The other one is also East Coast like me. So he is about 50-50 CSX and NS. And I started to chat with those guys. And then one of them actually had the idea to let's do a modeler group. So where each of us could build his own models according to the landscape that he prefers. For example, for the Canadian guys, it would be some of the Canadian landscape. I could do something that matches the East Coast. And we are kind of a loose group, so we don't have a specific name or topic. And each of us is building his own stuff, but we are using the same norms so that we are able to build up all the modules together. And it started as an idea and it slowly became a group which we have now. We started with like the idea of models. And now we have, I think, like a total of 15 to 20 or maybe even 25 modules. And we have a meeting each year. We had built up the whole layout twice so far. And at the end of this year is going to be the third time where we're going to have a meeting and build up all our modules. And it's pretty cool. So that allowed me to build something, to have something, even without the space for a closed layout. So it's not a loop, it's just a point to point, but I am able to expand it. And also it allows us to run longer trains, enjoy that, and also to have our own landscape specific to the area that we want to build and to simulate. But all of us have the same problem, that we don't have enough space for a big layout. So that is a pretty cool idea, I think, to have something at least, which is still better than to don't have anything, just boxes full of trains and don't able to run them. So that's when the idea of a switching layout came. So the idea of my switching, or the concept of my switching layout, is to be able to do some switching at home, which makes sense in terms of the industries, but it also allows to integrate the whole layout into a bigger one. So that was the basic idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the beauty of modular layouts, and especially if you can make it standalone and then be able to connect with the others.
Exactly.
Talk about how you met these guys. How did this even start?
Sure, and that was via Facebook. There was a big group on Facebook, or actually there are several ones, which are just in general about modular railroading. And most of the guys there were Germans, but I have seen some names which sounded Swiss to me. So one day I made a notification in that group. I made a post and asked who are from Switzerland in this group. And there were some people writing me. So I decided they were also American model railroaders. So that was the point when I decided to make a group for American modelers in Switzerland. So I did that group on Facebook. It's called US Modular Railroading in Switzerland. And I think we are up to 60 or 80 people by now. That was when I found out there are plenty of people with the same problem, but also with the same passion as me. So American railroading. And so, slowly the group became bigger and bigger, and I started to ride back and forth with all those guys. And then by a coincidence, one of the guys had the idea of a modular layout, and I've met him at a train show. I think that was in Germany. And then we just started chatting, and finally we founded our group, and that's where we are now.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Look what happens when you stick your neck out a little bit and just look for some people. Lo and behold, you find people that are like you. You found your people.
They are out there. You just have to find them. They are out there.
Yeah, that's for sure. So when you start building your modular layouts, you mentioned it's kind of like loose and there's no real rules. There's no real title to it or anything, but you got to have some kind of standards. How did you determine standards so that you make sure that these layouts all connect to each other?
One of the founders, who's called Fabian, he became a really good friend to me. He was the guy that initiated the whole thing, and he was also the guy that had the idea we could use a norm and the specification that already exists. So on Google there is a page for FREMO modular standards, and there are some differences in different FREMO groups, and we are using the FREMO standards for American railroaders. So that is the norm, that the standards that the guys in Germany use who are modeling American as well. So we agreed on that regulation or that norm, and that's where we started from there. So we just agreed on the basics, like the head side of the modulars where we connect. So the connectability has to be made, and that's all the rules that we have. So it's like code 83 and the sizes for the screws for the connectability. And other than that, you are free to do whatever you prefer.
Now, do they have to go in a certain order, or can you move the modular layouts around a little bit and shuffle them if you need to?
So that depends on the modules that the members are bringing. So the end of each module is according to the norms and to the specifications. But for example, so my modulars, I have a total of 4. And just the 2 ends of the 4 modules allow to be moved back and forth, because I have the the specifications that allows to connect to others, but in between my 4 modules, you can separate them because I have some curves and industry tracking and all that. But the end of the whole switching layout, that is where I am able to connect to others. And there are also the group members that have like one small module that on both ends allows to connect to others. And then there are others who built like a standalone, like I did, consisting of 4 modules or maybe 6 modules. And also that allows, again, just the 2 ends to be used and switched back and forth. But in between, some modules doesn't allow to connect to others and others do. So it depends on what are you building.
So where have you been able to find space to get these modules set up? Where are you guys meeting to do this?
A friend of us who is the founder of the group, who I mentioned before, Fabian, he's a volunteer firefighter, like so many others in this hobby, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a weird connection between firefighting and model railroading.
Absolutely, and I wasn't able to figure out what it is about that, but
he has. It's one of the world. It's one of the mysteries of the world. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
but I hopefully one day we will find out. So
if you figure it out, let us all know. Yeah, for
sure. I will do that. Yeah. I'm gonna make huge posts on all our
That'll
groups.
Be breaking Facebook, news here on Around the Layout podcast. Why firefighters are into railroads. But yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, he's an officer. I think he's an LT in the fire department, and he has some good connections to the local departments like the school administration, the fire department, and all that. And he was able to ask the school whether we could use on Saturdays and Sundays their hall where all the children meet together when school starts, because they have plenty of room there. And so he asked them, and they agreed. And we only have to pay a really small amount of money, especially if 10 of us come to the meeting. Then it's like, not sure, maybe $20-$30 per person, which is fairly reasonable price, especially in Switzerland where everything costs a lot of money. So that is a really cool opportunity we have there. And for this year, we still can use it. Hopefully for the next 10 years, that would be great.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So how is supply for American Railroad over there? Like you mentioned that you're using Code 83 track. How difficult is it to get your hands on the stuff you need to model American?
Well, it's a little bit more difficult than it was like 10-15 years ago. That was the time where we had 3 of these big shops in Switzerland. 2 of them closed down, and the only one that is still out there is actually, he only works with pre-orders because the gentleman who runs the store does it as a hobby, because he doesn't work anymore. He's just open on some Saturdays. It's easy with the possibility to ship everything to Switzerland. You just have to import all the stuff to Switzerland yourself. So you make a pre-order. People started to organize themselves, right? So when those 2 of the 3 big ones closed down the shops, that's where people started to do bigger pre-orders as groups. And that's what we do as well. So we have a community of, I think we are like 10, maybe 15 guys. And for example, if a friend of mine orders something from Otter Valley or whatever company, then he writes into the chat, "Hey guys, I'm going to ship this locomotive. Do you guys need anything else?" And then I can write down. So for example, I take 4 of the scrap gondolas from OVR. They have it in stock. I take this and this and this and this number. He adds it to his order. He ships everything to Switzerland, and then we split up the costs for the shipping and also the import tariffs. Because if you import something to Switzerland, of course, you pay taxes for it, which is fine, but it makes more sense to do a bigger order then. So it's not realistic to order one Scaletrans engine or whatever company. So it's not realistic to order one engine, ship it to Switzerland, because then you pay like $80 for the shipping. But if you order 3 or 4 locomotives, maybe you still pay only those $80. So then it's 20 per person. So we started to organize ourselves somehow.
Yeah, somehow as you sticking your neck out there and getting with these folks and organizing this. So you're more than just a modular group. You guys are a model railroading group. You're a community that you've all put together thanks to the internet.
I would agree to that. And also we have some meetings. Of course, we talk a lot about trains, but it has become a real good group of friends. So we do not only share the passion for the hobby, but we are also good friends as of by now. It started slowly and grow to a big friendly group, which we are now, and that is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. And boy, you think about how you get by going back to, is there anybody else out there like me that models American railroads here in Switzerland? To now, you guys are like a buying group. You figured out all these things to save money, make the logistics happen, find ways to work together so you have a bigger place to run your trains when you don't have the space to build your own big layout. Kudos to you, man. I mean, to reach out and get and make that all happen, that's excellent. And I'm sure that, that group is certainly appreciative of all this effort being put together to get this all done.
Absolutely. It took some years, but it is what it is now. It's pretty cool. And also the fact that there are younger members like me, I would consider myself a younger member in this hobby. It's not only those old white-haired guys with their trains in their garage. There are young modelers as well, and they are out there. And even in a country like Switzerland, I mean, we have a total population of about 9 million people in the country. And as I said, 95% of them are modeling Swiss model trains, which is fine. There are some cool layouts as well. But I mean, even here, I was able to find American modelers, Canadian modelers, East Coast fans, younger members, older members, and it's a pretty cool group. And it became so those guys became real good friends, and it is absolutely amazing how that works. And the internet has helped a lot, definitely. But we also have physical meetings. Sometimes we have online meetings, and then we share our passion. We share skills. We share tips and tricks and techniques. So Fabian is the guy for the woodwork. I am more the guy for the weathering, and then we have some electronic guys. And yeah, everybody brings something into the group, and that's what it is. It's pretty cool, yeah.
I love to insert into any podcast where we start to talk about this. The hobby is not dying; it is evolving, and you're part of that evolution. And I think that's what happens is when people see change, they don't like it. Nobody likes change, right? And they think that it's on a downward turn, but in reality, it's an evolution. It's the things that maybe the past generations weren't interested in, but you folks are certainly interested and extremely passionate about it. And it's taking model railroading forward. And especially when you're able to connect as a community and achieve the goals the way that you're doing. And then on top of that, share all of your special techniques. Now, you mentioned weathering. That is a passion of yours in the model railroading side of things. Talk about when you started to get into weathering.
I had to think about this myself because I'm not sure on which date I could narrow it down where it all started. I think it was Daniel Arnold on YouTube. He's an American modeler, and he had a YouTube channel in my very early age, in my very early years of model railroading. And somehow, by a coincidence on YouTube, I think it was the algorithm that was like, hey, here's a video about a guy vandalizing his trains. Maybe you liked it one. So I clicked on the video, and then I was like, oh my God, weathering, that is a thing. So there are techniques, there are ways to do that. I have never seen that before because, as I said earlier, it's not that common in Europe as it is in America. After that first YouTube video, I bought some pan pastels or some weathering powders and the matte coat right out of the bottle, and I started my very first project. And that was the point. I think I was about the age of 15. So it was somehow between school and military where I had the first contacts to the topic of weathering. And later after the military, when I came back to the hobby, I was really like, okay, I need an airbrush because most of the guys are using an airbrush. So at the age of 2022, I bought my first airbrush basic set with a compressor and one of these low value airbrush guns, and I started my first projects. So I found out that this is the thing I like to do in this hobby. And I think partly it was because I had no space for a layout. I had no space for something big, but I was able to do something in the meantime. So the idea became in my head that, okay, so even if I am not able to build a big layout, I still can paint and weather those trains. And one day maybe I will have the space and the room for a layout, and then all my models are already done. So that's how I started in the hobby, because I was like, okay, at least I can paint all my trains for the day the layout will be finished, or for the day I will have a layout at all. So that's how it started. And then I bought some books, I found some videos on YouTube, and I started to find out about different materials, different techniques, and like oil paints, acrylics, what are the differences and all that. And that's how I slowly came into the world of weathering, because it's a world by itself, I think. I learned a lot from the military modelers, especially in terms of oil paints. Most of my stuff I learned from military modelers, and also from John Crowdis. He's a Canadian modeler. JC's Rip Track is his YouTube account. I had hours and hours of chats between him and I, and also tons of his videos, which I learned. And then I developed some own techniques, or I took his technique and tested it out at home. And that's how it started all for me.
How did you connect with that wacky guy from Edmonton, Alberta, Rob Arsenault?
I think that was via Facebook in one of the groups. And I couldn't remember which group it was, but in one of the groups, I have seen a post, one of his projects that he finished. And also I have seen his logo. So I was like, okay, cool. Let's follow that group. Let's follow his page. Let's follow that guy. So I checked out his website, and so we talked about how I learned English. So one of the easiest ways to learn and develop English for me was just to simply send a friend request to those guys. And Rob Arsenault was one of them. So I just simply shot him a message. Hey, I'm Robin. I'm from Switzerland. You do amazing work, but how you do it? What are you using? So that's when we started chatting. And also, I think we had 2 or 3 times already some phone calls via Messenger. So we talked, and also we wrote. And that was pretty cool. Rob Arsenault is an amazing gentleman. He does amazing work. I highly recommend his works, and his weathering skills are just absolutely fantastic. And he is an absolutely great guy, and I much appreciate his help and also his time and effort.
Well, I can see how you get along with Rob Arsenault so well, because Rob is a very talented weathering guy and a modeler.
Absolutely.
But he also has the heart of a teacher, as do you. And you talk about doing the things that Rob does for everybody else. I mean, Rob obviously runs a business where he weathers, but he doesn't keep any secrets. If you ask Rob questions, he'll answer them. And it sounds like that's what you're doing for your group over there as well, kind of continuing that same spirit.
Yes, absolutely. So as I mentioned before, each guy has something specific that he has developed some skills in it. And for me, it was weathering, and for others, it was woodwork or programming locomotives. And we share most of our skills and tips and tricks. And I also did some YouTube videos. So John Crowd is the gentleman from Canada. He did the Down and Dirty Weathering Contest number 3 on YouTube. And I was like, okay, just let's try that. I have never done a YouTube video before. I have never done a script before. I have never used a program for cutting movie scenes and all that. So I was like, well, I think I will just try it. So I downloaded some programs. I watched tutorials how to make a video on YouTube and all that. And then I started the weathering project. I did a brass locomotive. It was a Norfolk Southern -9. And I did an Arrowhead gondola. These were the 2 projects that I did for that weathering contest. It's all up on YouTube. And so yeah, that was a great experience. John is a great guy, and it was hell of a lot of fun. So that was a pretty cool experience to make my first own video. I mean, it was all shot with my mobile phone, so I am not really experienced in terms of movie making, but it was a great experience, and it was an absolutely fun project. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, we'll definitely find those and share those links on our website, aroundthelayout.com/169. How did you get into brass? Because brass seems to be like, and I don't know a whole lot about brass. I just know that brass is like the next level, right? This, far superior detail and everything. How did you get into starting to collect brass locomotives?
I think that is all because of one engine. The big blow gas turbine engine. So in my childhood, I had a book back then when I was like, I don't know, 10, 15 years old. And in that book, there was a picture of the 3-unit big blow gas turbine, so the 8,500 horsepower one. And as a child, when I have seen that picture of that engine, I was like, oh my God, if I will ever find a model of this in HO scale, I'm going to buy it, because this is the most favorite locomotive for me of all times. And I started to do some research, and there was a company, this strange company, that I have found some models of the unit on eBay for a pretty big price, called Overland Models. So I was like, okay, what is Overland Models? I started to do some research, and then I found out, okay, there is brass. What is brass? Okay, it's a little bit different than plastic, but why? Okay, because it's handcrafted. Okay, so that's the main difference. Interesting, cool. So I did all that research, and then one day, it was, I think, right after my military service, I went into the shop, the one that is still remaining today. I went into the shop, and just next to the entry door, there was the 3-unit big blow gas turbine engine from Overland Models. It was the first time that I have ever seen this locomotive as a model, and I was all hooked for that one. So I made a little prepayment for that engine, and then I took all the money that I have left. I sold like all other engines and stuff that I was able to sell, and then I bought this first brass engine and my all-time favorite childhood dream locomotive, the big blow gas turbine. And that's where it all started, I think, because from then on, I was all hooked for brass because of just simply the fascination for this handcrafted piece of art. I don't really like to argue about plastic or brass, because for me, it's just simply one more addition to the great world of the hobby. So there are so many companies with great models. There is the cheaper engines where you do details yourself. There is the great level of detail that is done by other companies. There is brass, there is plastic, there is all that. And somehow, I don't know why, but over here in Switzerland, some of the guys, they just simply start argue about which one is better. And I don't know why, because it's just simply something else. It's something different. So I really like both of them. I have CSX 3194, which is a scale trains engine honoring our law enforcement. And I bought that engine after I finished police academy because it was a personal favorite for me. It has the red and blue ditch lights, which I think is just way too cool. But most of my other engines are brass. And for me, it's just simply the fascination for this handcrafted piece of art, because the level of detail is amazing. The locomotives are absolutely beautiful, and I just simply like the material of it, the feeling of it, and that's what fascinates me the most.
I'm guessing that the fact that you have a 4 modular switching layout is the reason why you can really drill into these details when it comes to locomotives, and then spend the time doing the weathering and the super detailing.
Absolutely. So with the big layout, I wouldn't be able to invest this amount of time into a certain model, but that's exactly the point. So before I had the modular layouts, I only had weathering to invest energy and fun into the hobby and enjoyment into the hobby. And later with the switching models, which are close to finish, by now I am still able to invest a lot of time into weathering, because it's not that big layout that uses up all my free time. So yeah, it's just a great addition to the hobby, and it's a lot of fun for me. And I also do some weathering work for others, both friends and customers. And yeah, that's what fascinates me the most, I think.
What is your favorite locomotive?
That's a rough question.
Is this like asking who's your favorite child, or those types of questions you ask to other people, or what's your favorite pet kind of thing? Yeah.
As of by now, I think it's my NS SD40-2 RCO. So it's NS 1633, which is a high hood engine. And I sent that locomotive to Bradley DCC. I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work.
Yeah, Bradley DCC. We've heard of him before, and we'll share a link to his stuff as well in the show notes around the layout.com/169.
Sure, yeah. And another great guy in the hobby. So Arthur Bradley from Bradley DCC is specialized in adding DCC and light and sound to all kind of engines. He's specialized in brass, but also he can upgrade and customize your plastic locomotives as well. Check out his website. So my brass engines all went to Bradley for the sound work because I am way too afraid to add DCC and sound and all those little cables and stuff like that. I am absolutely, so for me, it's like a horror movie. I would be totally afraid to ruin up an engine. So I decided I am the guy doing the weathering. He's the guy doing the DCC, and Fabian is the guy doing the woodwork for the modules. So we have specialists for each aspect of the hobby. So why not use them?
Well, that's also kind of, I agree, but it's also a little funny to me that you're worried about ruining a locomotive by the inside, but you have no fear when it comes to the outside because and that's how I am. Like I've even mentioned about sending locomotives to Rob Arsenault at Weather My Trains because I'm afraid of fouling up a brand new engine. You have no fear, but you've been doing it a long while. So you have a bigger level of comfort doing those types of things.
Yeah, that's true, but it took I think close to 10 years before I was like, okay, let's do a brass engine. So in 2021, in the Down and Dirty Weathering contest where I did that -9, that was the first. Yeah, I think that was the first brass engine I weathered up because all before it was just the plastic engines that I did. And that was the first time I was like, well, it's not really different. I was like, well, what could go wrong? But in between some of the weathering steps, I really started to think about what could go wrong. That was the point when I got a little afraid. So yeah, it was a rough journey, but it was a great experience. So yeah, but it is exactly as you said. So I am more worried about ruining the engine, the motors, or the electronics of a locomotive than from the outside. Because from the outside, I am like, well, in the worst case, maybe I can strip down the paint and ask a professional painter to repaint the engine. But if I ruin up all the electronics, then I killed an engine. So I don't want to ruin that. But going back to your original question, what is my favorite engine? I think it's that 1633 with the RCO flashing lights on top of the roof, because Arthur was the guy adding those lights to that engine and using the proto throttle with a radio controlled diesel engine on my switching layout. I don't really think we can get any closer to the prototype, right?
Yeah, that definitely, the proto throttle brings it to a whole new level for sure.
It does absolutely. And I just got a notification from Division Point. So that 1633 is a nice EMD engine, but I have the Norfolk Southern SD70 ACE pre-ordered from Division Point, another brass company, and they announced they are going to do some SD70 ACEs. And I have 2 of them on pre-order. And at the end of August, early September, they are going to be here. And I think if you would ask me in September what currently my favorite brass engine is, I think it would be that Norfolk Southern 1111. I think that is going to be my top number 1 from September on.
I'm scrolling through your Facebook group, the Jackieville Switching Layout, and I'm seeing a whole variety of locomotives that you weather. Tell us about those.
Sure. So I think the latest projects were all work for customers. I have some posts I'm going to make surely on my group. I just finished up 2 brass engines, which are from my own collection. But all the other engines, especially the Europeans one, so those are all customer work. That started when it was just out of fun. I weathered up a locomotive. I think it was an American one. And I posted it on, there is an eBay for Switzerland, which is called Ricardo, but it's kind of like eBay. And I made a post there. I uploaded the pictures of the weathered locomotive, and there was a guy writing me, hey, I'm going to buy that weathered engine, and I also have a big collection. Are you interested in weathering my stuff? So then I was like, well, sure, give it a try. And from that on, I started to do customer work, and then I did some European locomotives for a friend of mine. I posted that one as well in another Facebook group. And then people from that group started writing me as well. Hey, I have some European engines. Would you mind weather them as well? And that's how it started to grow and grow and grow. And as of by now, I have several different customers that I do work for. Some of them are close friends. Some of them are customers. Some of them are long-term customers. And that's where most of the of the posts in my group are actually customer projects, especially the European engines. I have to admit, I have one exception. So I only model contemporary North American railroading, mostly NS, but there is one exception. I have one night train from a European company, and I have a locomotive for that night train because I used to ride that night train from Zurich in Switzerland to Budapest in Hungary. After we moved from Hungary to Switzerland, I went back to my friends each year during summer vacation, and I rode on that night train. So that is the only exception in my collection, because my goal is to have mostly of my stuff concentrated in one era and for one railroad, except for locomotives, of course, because those are used by other companies as well, just like the prototype. But I don't really want to have like everything and fill up my room here even more. So most of the engines you mentioned are customer projects, and I do them for several different customers. And some of them are European modelers, some of them are American modelers.
Oh, wow. So people are sending stuff over to you to weather and do, exactly, and then send back to the U.S. as well. So you've built yourself a nice little side hustle as well, learning weathering and doing a phenomenal job. There's some beautiful photos. We're going to share some of them on our website, aroundthelayout.com/169. Go there and check that out. Well, Robin, I certainly appreciate you taking the time, making this all work, and connecting with us here on Around the Layout. We're going to get you back on. We're going to talk more about that modular layout and maybe have a conversation about how it's operated, because I think that'll be a great topic to talk about. But until then, thanks again for stopping by.
Thank you very much, Ray. It was a great opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. Learn more about today's episode, check out past shows, and much more on our website, aroundthelayout.com. Show your support by becoming an operating crew member at aroundthelayout.com/crew. Follow us on social media, aroundthelayout.com/social. And send us your feedback, aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks for hanging out with us around the layout.